Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Yura and we are back talking about Meadowlands. That's right, it's been 6 months since I've talked about this format and the brainworm is back in full force. Before we actually get into the deck profile though, and I'm very excited to talk about this one, I do really want to quickly mention how my videos are going to work in relation to Konami's Time Wizard changes. For those of you not in the know, in NA territories only, Time Wizard is no longer going to be available at NA majors like YCSs, and instead they will have time travel events, which are functionally how historical events appear in Master Duel with updated rulings and updated erratas and so on and so on. For the most part, my deck lists are going to be built for Time Wizard, which is how the formats appear historically, as opposed to Time Travel, which is how they'll appear for NA majors. I will, however, make note of where you can swap cards in and out for time travel play and whether or not a deck actually changes in functionality between the two formats. For the most part, these decks aren't actually that much different because Meadowlands isn't super affected by the differences between Time Wizard and Time Travel. The main differences being a couple of erratas that don't matter too much, Constellar and Evil Swarm not getting their extra normal summon guys negated by Effect Veiler, and Atlanteans can be blocked from activating if they're DD-crowed before they have a chance to actually activate on a new chain. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about Gem Knight. So this is a deck that I have had a lot of problems building. For the longest time, I was trying to run this with a Lightsworn package to make good use of Seraphinite because that's like a relatively easy way to fit in deck milling and also lights for the material requirements. The problem there is Lightsworn in this format is really weirdly still hit, and the cards that we do have access to are just really slow in comparison to a lot of the other decks running around. So past that, I tried combining this with a volcanic package to make Citrine, which is the Gem Knight plus a generic Pyro, because you can just recycle shells to keep advantage in your hand repeatedly, but Citrine's not really enough of a win condition on its own to play around, and using Citrine as Xyz material because it's level 7 only gives you access to the generic 7 pool, which, I'm gonna be honest, is not that great. So this deck was on the back burner for a little bit until I came across a Meadowlands gameplay video from about a year ago of just people playing Time Wizard, which is, I gotta say, really cool to just see people making videos for this format. I love this format so much, and seeing more people talking about it is always a blast. I'm gonna link that video down in the description below, but this list is very heavily inspired off of the Gem Knight list used in that video. For those of you unfamiliar with Gem Knights, they are a primarily fusion archetype that revolves around normal monsters and also Geminis sometimes because they are normal monsters sometimes. The big things you're going to be wanting to do with this archetype are set up at least like a big fusion monster. Most of these guys are just like solid utility. We're not actually on that many of them. We're only on one of like the ones with specific name requirements, that being Garnet in Ruby. But there are other ways you can build this deck to expand your toolbox a little more. Currently, I'm only on Prismora, which is discarding a Gem Knight card to pop a face-up card on the field. Ruby because it gets big and deals piercing. Seraphinite because she's an extra normal summon. Zirconia just because it's very big and very easy to make and works very well because this secondary material type, being one rock type monster, works with Obsidian and Lazuli, who we'll get back to in a moment. And then finally, we have our giant big boss monster, Gem Knight Master Diamond, who is a card that I keep forgetting we actually have this early on in the deck's life cycle, but I think it's a really cool boss to field, even if it's not the best thing. The thing that ties this deck together is the fusion spell. And believe it or not, there really aren't that many fusion spells in this format that warrant playing around them. The other ones being like a Dark Calling if you're Exactly B and you really like building jank around like Dark Gaia, or Miracle Fusion because that card is ridiculous. Gem Knight Fusion is an exception to this rule because in those other cases, you just kind of have to hard draw into those spells and they're really powerful when you activate them, but Gem Knight Fusion is a card that can semi-search itself. Gem Knight Fusion reads, fusion summon a Gem Knight Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials, and if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish any Gem Knight monster from your graveyard to add this card to your hand. This works incredibly well in conjunction with a staple of the format, Lavalval Chain. Chain being a rank 4 Xyz that, for the most part, is just used as a foolish burial for any card in your deck. This means you can take any 2 level 4s, of which we have many ways of fielding those, turn them into a Lavalval Chain, and then send Gem Knight Fusion to the graveyard. And if you have a Gem Knight in the graveyard already, say you used a Garnet to make your Lavalval Chain, you can detach that material add the Gem-Knight fusion back by banishing the Garnet, and then suddenly you have your fusion plays online. To make this kind of game plan work, we're on a lot of generic 4 extenders, like the Photon Thrasher, who also pulls double duty as being a light attribute for the Gem-Knight Seraphonite fusion. We're on a Prisma, which is also a Seraphonite supporter, and honestly, I've been very much considering bumping this guy to like 2 copies and maybe running a Hero Lives as just a method of putting another level 4 body on the board that also acts as Foolish Burial for cost for any Gem-Knight name. Doing so without the normal summon also opens up lines where we can normal summon our Gem Armadillo consistently, which is our Gem-Knight Stratos. We're also on Rescue Rabbit because if you want to make a rank 4 in this format, Rescue Rabbit is a fantastic way to go about it if you have normal monsters that you actually care about. In this case, we have the triple Garnet because Garnet is both the best normal monster in the Gem-Knight archetype and it makes the best fusions. You could maybe get away with running Tourmaline. I think that's the Thunder one. And the fusions that that card gives you access to aren't bad per se. I just really like having access to Ruby. And I think Topaz is like, it's just not as good. The only other quote-unquote normal monster we're running in the deck is Gem-Knight Amber, which we can't fetch off of Rescue Rabbit anyway because it's a effect monster in the deck. Gem-Knight Amber is a Gemini monster that when additionally normal summoned, you can send a Gem-Knight card from your hand to the graveyard to target a banished monster and add it to your hand. Weirdly enough, this actually works really well with something like Rescue Rabbit that banishes itself to get 2 bodies on board. The reason why is because we're running Daigusto Emerald. If you have your Garnets in rotation already, you can field an Emerald later, and then you can just shuffle back the Garnets, add the Rescue Rabbit back to hand off of an Amber, and then rip the Rabbit again for additional materials. Additionally, Daigusto Emerald being a rock type means that it doesn't just have to sit on your field after you use this effect, you can also fuse it away for a giant monster like Zirconia. Speaking of rock monsters, Obsidian and Lazuli are the other 2 Gem-Knight names we're on, and they are very important for keeping our advantage loop online and consistent. Lazuli being if she's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target a normal monster in your grave and add it to your hand. This can include Amber while it's in the graveyard because it is treated as a normal monster while it is there. Thank you, Geminis, I guess. And Obsidian, which if this card is sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can target a level 4 or lower normal monster in your grave and special summon it. These cards both work as really powerful graveyard extension, and also they work really well in tandem with things like Amber and Gem-Knight Fusion. Gem-Knight Fusion proccing the Lazuli no matter where she is, and proccing the Obsidian when it's in your hand. But Amber works really well with Obsidian because Amber sending a Gem-Knight card from hand to the graveyard to then add back a banish will also proc the Obsidian to special summon a normal from your graveyard, and given this deck has a tendency to put normals in the graveyard, you will most likely have them there. This card also works well with something like Prismora, which discards a Gem-Knight card to pop something, so this can give you extra extension to make a game push. There are just a lot of ways to make these cards do really impressive things. For the other 4 extenders, we're of course on my ever-present Instant Fusion. I am firmly of the opinion that if any deck can run this card to make Xyzs easier, or to give yourself some like weird material requirements like Hieratics needing a dragon on field, I think they should be on this card. It is fantastic. In prior versions of this deck, I was using some generic like normal monster extra deck guys like Kaminari Attack to put a Thunder on board, or Ojamanite to get a light. In the current version of this deck, we're just on double Carbonala Warrior. The typing and stuff on this doesn't matter too much, but we do use this to out some really weird boards. We'll either use it to make it Excalibur to get over something really big. Most of the time, it is just material for chain, but sometimes you can make Gem-Knight Pearl, which is a Gem-Knight in name, so you can make the Gem-Knight fusion monsters. As for the rest of the extra deck, we're on some staples that you're just kind of used to seeing in this format. Abyss Dweller is good into a lot of decks. Double Evolve All Chain, because if the first one gets negated, you really need the second one to resolve. And Maestro is just kind of good for sitting behind and stalling out. The rest of the main deck is kind of just full of some regular staples that you're used to seeing if you've seen my Meadowlands videos before. 1 Heavy, 1 Warning, 1 Judgment, 1 Reborn, triple MST, 1 Dark Hole. These are all kind of just like assumed to be here. We're also on Effect Veiler in the main just because I want to have some kind of interaction on my opponent's turn, and it also doubles as a light material for Seraphonite. The other staples we're on in here are double reasoning, because we do want our graveyard getting set up, and hitting a Gem Knight Fusion early is really powerful. We also just want to have more access to regular guys on board. Hitting any Gem Knight off this and summoning it to your field is really powerful. The worst one being like Obsidian, but if you get any of these cards into the graveyard fast, you're in a much better spot than you would be normally. And finally, one return from the different dimension, because Gem Knight Fusion just sets up our banish zone so consistently that we can flip this later on into a game and summon out like Zirconias and Prismoras we've already gone through. It is a very powerful finishing effect. Onto the side deck, we've got some regular mainstays here. We've got Triple Max C. Triple Droll and Lockbird is something that I want to try out. I don't know if it's actually going to work that well. Realistically, in time travel, these Drolls could just become EDOPro and it will be infinitely better. We're on Triple Super Poly for a reason I'll get to in a moment. One Book of Moon, because it's just solid, and a lot of decks kind of have trouble dealing with it, but it is at 1, so this might find its way into the main, but we're already at 41, and I don't really want to go up anymore. And then Double Bottomless and Double Torrential. One of these used to be in the main, but I want to try out a variant just not playing any back row aside from these 3 limited cards. So we'll see how it goes. But back to Super Poly. The reason this is here, originally I was playing things like Volcanic Queen to put a Pyro on my opponent's board to then make Citrine, but Citrine doesn't do enough on its own that I think I would rather just cut it. And instead, our Super Poly target is actually living in the side deck. We're on 1 Gem Knight Amethyst, because you can use any Gem Knight monster plus any random piece from a Merlebana end board, like Abyss Gaios, to Super Poly into Amethyst, which is very, very powerful. With all that said, though, I've yapped enough. Let's see it in action. All right, game time. And honestly, our hand's looking really, really solid. We've got Reborn is a powerful one-of, Veiler for interruption, Rescue Rabbit is one of the best starters this deck has, Gem Armadillo in our Stratos, and MST, which into our opponent's deck of Gladiator Beast Firefist is pretty solid. It stops the fire formations from properly resolving, so I'm feeling pretty solid about this. We won the die roll, so we're going to go first. Let's see what we get off the top. So we're going to draw into a Garnet, which is scary, but we still got 2 in the deck for the Rescue Rabbit, so we're going to go ahead and summon both of those out. We're going to overlay for Lavalval Chain. Chain, detach a Garnet, send Gem Knight Fusion to the grave. We're going to banish the Garnet to add the Gem Knight Fusion to our hand, set our MST, and pass it over. Our opponent's going to attempt to do the exact same thing, but we've got Veiler. They're going to set 2, and we're going to snipe that Mirror Force out from under them with the MST. We draw into another Veiler, go Gem Armadillo. We're going to add the Obsidian to hand, go Lavalval Chain again, because this card just gets to do that for no reason. Go Gem Knight Fusion, proc off a couple of effects in our graveyard to get the Gem Knight Fusion back and the Obsidian to summon back the Garnet. We're going to make another Zirconia using the Zirconia as material so we can Monster Reborn it back and then get swinging for a huge amount of damage, killing on turn 3. All right, game 2. That first game was really crazy because we stopped our opponent's only attempt to actually play the game, and we were just kind of able to capitalize off that because the rest of our hand just included so much gas. The other half of the times you play this deck, you wind up with hands like this, where you've got a bunch of non-engine and generic extenders and no Gem Knights to speak of. This is also going to be a really good showcase of why I think Reasoning will probably end up leaving the list when we come back to the deck at the end of the video. Overall, our hand looks like fine. We can make a rank 4 with the Thrasher plus Instant Fusion, and Reasoning might actually get us somewhere, but our opponent's hand is looking significantly better than it was last time, and they have the opportunity to finally go first. So they can start the game off by drawing an effect Veiler for turn, which is devastating for us. They're going to leave the Tenki, add a Laquari, go Tensu, summon another guy, make Tiger King, set a third Tenki, and then set the Mirror Force. We do have the MST to answer that. We're going to snipe the Unknown because we're not that afraid of a Tenki. We're going to go Thrasher before we Reasoning. And right there is where the problem with Reasoning lies. Rescue Rabbit has this very funny line of text on it that says it cannot be special summoned from the deck, which Reasoning attempts to do, meaning that even though our opponent guessed 3 on the Reasoning, the Rabbit just goes to graveyard and we get absolutely nothing for our troubles. We still have some plays to make. We're going to go Instant Fusion for Carbonala Warrior and make a Gem Knight Peril so we can crash over this guy, but our opponent does still have a Tenki online alongside a Test Tiger and a Veiler, which is very scary. They're going to go Andal. Summon out the Andal, go Test Tiger, shuffle back the Andal. They're going to get Murmillo out to pop our Gem Knight Pearl. Swing in with the Murmillo for 800, shuffle back, and then they get to go Darius. Darius is going to reborn that Laquari, and they're going to sit on this. They do still have Valor, which is terrifying for us, but we do have Thrasher plus Instant Fusion, so we can make a second rank 4. We're going to rip both of those, go Carbonala Warrior, we're going to make Excalibur, and run into that Valor, but we're still big enough to hit over the Darius here. And now, you might have noticed there that Laquari went back to the deck. Darius also has a very funny line of text that says, when this card leaves the field, shuffle the monster it summoned back into the deck. Neither myself nor my opponent knew that effect was in there. It just kind of snuck its way into the text box. So we've kind of simplified the board state. These Tenki can't add anything. This Tensu has nothing to summon. And we've got a 2k body on our field. We're going to pass it back to our opponent. They're going to draw a Solemn Warning off the top, which is terrifying, but does not immediately contest us. We get to go Prisma here and immediately hit a warning, which is very unfortunate. So we get to get in for another 2k. It's functionally like we resolved the Excalibur. But they get to go Andal here, which is way bigger than our guy. And now we are on 0 cards to a 2200 guy. And that Amber is not going to be enough. We pass it back. Our opponent's got Judgment. So even if we do find a play, it's just not going to be enough to do anything. We find Rhoda, which would normally do something. We get to go Thrasher here, Thrasher, and then go Amber, make Maestroke, and immediately get hit with the Judgment, pretty much sealing our fate. Our opponent just has to find a single monster, which they don't, but even then, any draw off the deck is not going to do it. Heavy Storm is not enough, and we're going to scoop it up. All right, we're into game 3, and these hands are looking really great. Our opponent's going to lead with a Tenki, getting the Andal and setting the Bottomless Trap hole. We've got an MST for that, and we find a Photon Thrasher off the top, which is an incredible find. We're going to go Gem Knight Fusion. Gem Knight Fusion is going to send the Obsidian and the Garnet. Garnet is going to get reborn off the Obsidian. We're going to add back the Fusion, make a Lavalval Chain, stack the Gem Armadillo for next turn. We've got enough on the board that we can just pressure whatever they're going to do, and we're not too worried about what they're setting up. We just don't want to walk into something like a sideboard, a Lightning Storm, or anything that would just clear our entire board and leave us with nothing. So they're going to go Bear, send their Tenki to pop our guy. We're going to go Gem Armadillo on our turn. And during this game, I don't know why I had this, but I had this soul read on my opponent that they had a Mirror Force back here. So I changed my Zirconia to defense position here and just tried to hit over the Bear with my Gem Armadillo, which did turn out to be true. So we do lose our Armadillo, but they're out a really important trap card, and we have a really big guy on our board with follow-up on our hand. Our opponent's going to go the Bestiary into a Diamond Direwolf, and the reason why they didn't just bounce the Bestiary into our defense position Zirconia to make a Murmillo play is because they sided out of one of their Murmillos, and the second one is sitting in their hand. So they're going to set the Judgment and pass back to us. We've got crazy extension online. Gem Knight Fusion here plays really well into Solemn Judgment, because if it does get Judgmented, the Gem Knight Fusion could just banish any one of our Gem Knight monsters from our graveyard to add itself back, and we don't lose out on our materials. So we're going to summon the Zirconia. We're going to do the exact same thing we did before. Obsidian's going to reborn the Garnet, add back the Gem Knight Fusion by banishing the Zirconia, and we're going to put our opponent in 500 life points, and they draw a Tensu off the top, sealing their fate. Funny enough, we could have actually normal summoned this Maxi if I had done the math out, but I didn't in the moment, so oh well, it worked out. All right, we're back with the deck, and honestly, I kind of couldn't have asked for much else from this deck. It definitely isn't a deck that is going to be consistently taking on the meta, but it is a very fun rogue deck to pilot, and is maybe the best fusion deck in the format that isn't exactly just like hero, and hero even to an extent, unless you're playing like a very specific build with like King of the Swamp and stuff, which isn't great. It's not like mainly a fusion deck. It just kind of plays Miracle Fusion because that card's really good. But this deck really does feel like something special. And you'll notice there are some notable changes in here, like the reasoning is gone for a Hero Lives. We bumped up another copy of Prisma. I was initially going to cut the Return from the Different Dimension to go down to 41, but I think in a world where we're playing Rabbit, we want to like keep our Garnets in the deck. So I think 42 is like fine for now. There is very likely going to come a time where I come back to this deck and I find 2 cards to cut, but for right now, I think playing 42 in this specific deck is totally fine because we have so many ways of thinning our deck out and getting the cards into the positions that we want them to be in, because we have things like Lavalval Chain to put our fusion spell in the graveyard, and finding Lavalval Chain is really not that difficult because we play so many 4 extenders, and Prisma on its own, being able to reveal Ruby to Foolish Burial a Garnet and then become a Gem Knight in name is really, really powerful. And for our final change, we also swapped the Drillin Lockbirds out for 3 Lightning Vortex. And there's a very specific reason for this. This deck does not have a lot in the ways of interruption because there's just not a lot of things in Engine that really do that. So we're going more in on the aggro style in our sideboard plan, where we side in Lightning Vortex to clear their board for an impressive game push, but this card also has a really interesting interaction with Obsidian, where you can pitch the Obsidian for the cost of Lightning Vortex, and it will trigger the Obsidian, getting you a Reborn. So overall, I'm really happy with where this deck is at. There's definitely going to be some changes that I can make that'll make it even better, and I think getting it down to 40 cards is probably the right thing to do in the long run. But honestly, I'm just having fun piloting this deck. It is so much fun going into each individual turn and trying to find a way to lethal, because this deck just has so much gas at its disposal. It feels kind of like Hieratic to a certain extent, where every single turn you will, if you have conserved your resources correctly, likely have a lethal line. And that playstyle is just so much fun to me. I love it so much. And also, it's just cool to play a fusion deck in this format. There really aren't many opportunities to do so because the good ones are like Hero or they're bad decks. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Most of the fusion decks in this format are just terrible and there's just no reason to play them. So with all that covered, thank you all so much for watching. It's been kind of lovely getting back to recording Meadowlands again, and I'm sure I'll be back to it very, very soon. But for right now, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.